On October 4, 1967, a small fishing village located on the southern tip of Nova Scotia, Canada, witnessed one of the most famous and well-documented incidents involving unidentified flying objects in history. This place is called Shag Harbor, named after a bird from the cormorant family, and on that fateful day, the little village, which until then had been left off the maps, was thrust into the global spotlight. Even now, more than 50 years later, this event continues to intrigue ufologists, researchers, historians, authorities, and enthusiasts who see in Shag Harbor one of the most notorious possible extraterrestrial encounters ever recorded. Hey there, huh? If you're interested in this topic, then stay with us, because in today's video, we'll introduce you to this case with all the details we can gather. It all started, as mentioned, on the night of October 4th. Several people near the harbor reported seeing a series of lights moving across the sky, but these were no ordinary lights. They were well-defined, orange, and moved back and forth in a seemingly organized manner. Investigations indicate that there were more than 30 eyewitnesses, meaning we can't infer it was a mere coincidence. Along with the lights, people saw a kind of aircraft, a robust object, about 60 meters long and more than 10 meters. To some, it had a cylindrical shape, similar to a cigar. To others, it looked more like a dome. It all depended on the perspective of the observer. But what everyone agreed on was that it emitted a distinctive, low sound, and its lights flashed in a quite peculiar manner. Suddenly, this object plunged steeply through the air, toward the icy waters of the North Atlantic. But contrary to what the witnesses expected, it didn't collide with the water but hovered over it as if floating. Despite the strangeness, a group of teenagers gathered at the harbor called the authorities, thinking it was an aerial accident or something of that sort, and that victims might be calling for help. The call was made to the Canadian Mounted Police Battalion, a body similar to our cavalry. The operator's first reaction was skeptical. Since it was a group of teenagers who might have been drunk or pulling a prank, he didn't give it due importance, especially because the boys' report seemed quite absurd, and indeed it was. However, more and more calls from witnesses from all over began to emerge, who had seen the same phenomenon. The operator had no choice but to dispatch a group to the region to investigate what was happening. And what a surprise it was for the patrol when they arrived at the location. They confirmed that the event, despite its strangeness, was indeed happening. However, since they were on horseback and the lights were hovering about 300 to 800 meters off the coast, there wasn't much that could be done. Then something different began to happen. The lights, which were previously orange, turned yellow and left a trail, a kind of foam in the water. About 5 minutes later, the object began to dive. No one knew what was actually happening. Whether it was a military vehicle, a plane, a boat, a submarine, nothing about its actions seemed to fit any known patterns up to that point. When the object dove, the mounted police were already in contact with the Coast Guard, who, along with the fishing vessels of the local inhabitants, began the search to find victims or, at least, to understand what was happening. When they arrived at the location where the vehicle had sunk, there were no more lights, sounds, or signs of the vessel, just a yellow trail with a foamy appearance, something that definitely wasn't a natural phenomenon, as neither the fishermen nor the Coast Guard officials had ever seen anything like it. The rescue operation extended until about 3 a.m. and was concluded since no trace could be found. The next day, the Rescue Coordination Center produced and sent an official report to the Canadian Forces headquarters in Ottawa. The document indicated that something had fallen into the waters of the Shag Harbor region, but that nothing had been found, and the origin of the object in question was unknown. The agency then sent a detachment with advanced detection instruments, as well as highly trained Navy divers, but unfortunately, none of this was enough. After several days of searches, which included the surface and the seabed, absolutely nothing was found. The case was officially closed that same year due to the lack of evidence that could solve it. From then on, many theories and assumptions began to emerge in the region. People suspected possible Russian incursions, technological military vehicles, or even prototypes of new weapons, vessels, or government aircraft. And we must not forget that it was a complicated time. The Cold War was at its peak, and spirits were heightened due to the division between the socialist and capitalist blocs. This latency lasted until the year 1993 when the case was brought to light again by the investigative effort of some ufologists. They conducted interviews and collected testimonies from numerous witnesses. They analyzed newspaper headlines and police reports open to the public, in addition to the documents produced in relation to the incident and the search and rescue attempts. The findings made by them were surprising. The inquiries pointed out that the incident at the harbor, with the appearance of the lights and the fall of the object into the ocean, were not the only strange manifestations, just the climax. They reported that on that same day, October 4th, at 7:15 p.m., the commander of Air Canada Flight 305 reported that there was an unidentified object following a parallel course to his aircraft, but a few kilometers away. The commander communicated the fact by radio to the rescue center and later sent an official report to the authorities, a document that could be traced by the investigations of the ufologists. And the coincidences don't stop there. The investigators discovered, through testimonies, that American technological instruments had also detected the unidentified object. And, as we mentioned, this was a very critical period for international relations, as the world was divided between two major ideological blocs. The United States was the main exponent of the capitalist coalition, which is why it developed various strategies, often using the forces and territory of allies, to gain an advantage in a potential conflict that could happen at any moment. That's why, in the 1960s, they installed a military base with state-of-the-art resources near the port of Shag Harbor. The goal was to detect magnetic anomalies that could locate and track Russian vessels attempting to advance on American territory through the Atlantic Ocean. As the equipment had the most advanced technology available at the time and the phenomenon occurred very close to these instruments, it's certain that they could detect the anomaly. And this was reinforced by witnesses who provided information to the ufologists. According to them, several American vessels, including ships and submarines, were dispatched to the region to investigate what had happened. They reportedly stayed there for about 3 days but were relocated when a Russian submarine was detected in nearby waters. Some parts of these reports were confirmed by the U.S. government, especially those concerning the investigations of enemy vessels. However, they kept the UFO incident under wraps, as one might expect. In 2009, the Canadian Society for the Investigation of Unusual Aerial Phenomena reopened the case and conducted new investigations. Again, many interviews were conducted, testimonies collected, and documents analyzed, but no definitive conclusion was reached, at least not officially, leaving the case as a major mystery. The incident completely changed the local culture. As we said at the beginning of the video, Shag Harbor was just a fishing village that was almost fading into obscurity, but everything changed because of the phenomenon. Today, it is an important part not only of the culture but also of the region's economy, as it drives commerce and tourism from curious and enthusiastic people who go there to learn more about the event. A museum was created to display the main evidence collected over the years, which, as we've seen, is not insignificant. Additionally, there are internationally known events, fairs, and exhibitions that chose Shag Harbor as their venue. As no physical evidence was ever found, the incident remains a great enigma. Many argue it's just a matter of common human phenomena, despite the strangeness of the facts. It was a very tumultuous time, and practically everything was valid to stay one step ahead of the adversary. However, some say that even today, there is nothing produced by humans capable of explaining everything that was seen and heard that night. The mystery continues. That's all for now, see you next time.